Hi, everyone, and happy Monday, and welcome to our Good Grief workshop. For those that might not be familiar with Good Grief, we are an all-in-one platform that supports people navigating caregiving, serious illness, end-of-life planning, legacy planning. And the way that we do that is we provide helpful guides, checklists, workshops such as these, access to vetted experts in a community of other people that have been in your shoes and know how to help. I'm 𝗤𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. I'm the founder of Good Grief, and I'm really grateful that you're here for our session on an introduction to memoir and legacy writing. Now, for today's session, we have Ashley Halloran, and Ashley is a professional writer and trained death doula. She's actually written for Hollywood and has spent years helping shape stories that connect, move, and stay with people. Now, Ashley brings that same deep understanding of storytelling into her work as a legacy writing and memoir coach, where she guides individuals as they reflect on their lives, helping them make meaning from their experience and helping them preserve what matters most. In her coaching, Ashley helps people uncover the pivotal moments that define their story, helping them shape them into a clear and compelling narrative, and helping them find their voice to tell the truth, whether that becomes a letter for their loved ones, or a personal reflection, or a chapter of their future memoir. So we're incredibly lucky to learn from her today. And Ashley, thank you again for joining us. Before I hand it over to you to get us started, I just want to make a quick note on the format for today. So this workshop, like most of our workshops, will be about 40 minutes long. In this case, we're going to do a little bit of a switch up because part of the intention for today is Ashley's going to walk us through some prompts, and we're going to take some time to think and write some, you know, excerpts ourselves and share it with the group. So in this case, while I am recording so that members, who maybe couldn't join can follow along, what I will do in this case is I'll make sure to pause the recording whenever we stop and have some time to write and whenever we share so that you guys can all feel free to share freely. And then, whenever we pick back up in non-sharing moments, then we will pick the recording back up. So with that, Ashley, I will hand it off to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Veronica, for that lovely introduction. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. As Veronica shared, I'm a memoir and legacy writing coach, and I work with people facing the end of life, as well as anyone wanting to tell their life stories or help a loved one do so. And so, first, I want to give a little bit of background on how I got into this specific legacy writing niche. Primarily, I am a screenwriter in television and film, and I've done that for many years. And I also do some memoir and essay writing myself. But I got into this zone a few years ago. I had a year where I lost many loved ones at one time. And I was really struck by the lack of ritual and meaning surrounding their deaths. And one moment that really stuck with me is I was with my grandfather at his bedside when he died. And, when he did pass, there was a lovely hospice worker there, but she read this poem by his body that was completely random, and it was something he really would have hated. And that moment really stuck with me that at the end of this amazing man's life, there's a random person reciting something random, and it just felt like this huge miss for this huge moment of his life coming to a close. And so I started following the Good Death movement, which advocates for a more compassionate and informed and personalized end of life experience. And the notion is like if we acknowledge death, we can plan for it and make it more meaningful. And, it made me think like, if we can plan for death like we plan for any other ritual in our life, like a wedding or a baby or all of these things, like why don't we plan for the thing that is going to happen to all of us and create meaning from the biggest key life moment, which is the end of it. And I learned about the role of death doula, which, if you guys don't know what that is, it's modeled after the birth doula model. And death doulas they provide non-medical holistic support for people facing the end of their lives. And they provide vigil planning, emotional support, grief work, and of course, legacy work. And so I did this training and I learned about the legacy work, which is where, you reflect on your life, you focus on making meaning from what you've learned, and with the goal of capturing an expression to leave for loved ones or for the world if you want to publish. And that can take really any form. It can be like a recipe book or music, but as a writer, I really connected with the storytelling side of legacy work. And so I got the chance to start working in legacy work when I connected with a friend of mine who's a neurologist in palliative care at UCLA. And she told me that many of her patients were desperately wanting to write their life stories, but they just didn't have the tools or the support to do that. And so she started referring her patients to me, and UCLA funded having me work with these patients. And she referred me to my first patient, Melissa, who is a 45-year-old woman with breast cancer and brain cancer. And together we've been working to write a book of her life. And so things kind of took off from there. And what I have learned in doing this is that this work is so powerful because I get to provide tools and guidance for clients to reflect and make meaning through writing their stories. But the surprise and delight with it is that it's actually the process of reflecting and the process of the writing has provided just as much meaning as the product. So it's been a super meaningful thing, and I'm excited to share with you guys. The first thing that comes up in Memoir with my clients is they always say, like, why does anyone care about my story? Like, my life is just not that interesting. Like, won't it be boring? And then everyone who finds out about my work, they're like, oh, like, do your clients have these like super crazy life stories? And it's a very natural instinct to feel like that. But the truth is that everyone has a compelling story to tell. And it's just about finding that way in and finding the pivotal moments of your life and then shaping them into a compelling, dramatic structure. And again, most importantly, it's about what we learn about ourselves in the process of finding those moments and making that meaning and then getting the opportunity to share that with loved ones, or if you have the goal of publishing, but just kind of finding those pivotal moments. And so finding the pivotal moments of our lives is what Memoir is all about. And so, Memoir specifically, it's a personal, true story about the moments that change you. Versus autobiography, which is, it aims to cover more like the full span of a life, kind of chronologically, usually beat by beat. But Memoir is, tuning in, zooming into these pivotal moments. It's a form of what we call creative nonfiction, which is a genre of writing where you tell true stories, but using literary tools. And so the key tool in Memoir is writing in scene. So you're writing with the sensory details and dialogue from the characters of your life that helps your reader be in the moment with you and helps us that true story feel real and alive on the page, and it brings the reader into your life with you. And I think of Memoir as the reverse of fiction. So in fiction, we start with a story and a message that we want to tell. And we then create characters and scenes to create an arc to bring that story and that message to life. Whereas in Memoir, you're kind of working with the reverse, where we're the main characters of our lives, and we have to mine our own lives for those moments and powerful moments and scenes that connect to form an arc of a story that we want to tell. And so I think what's really daunting when we're telling our life stories, it's, where do you start? And the impulse is kind of to cover everything and like, oh, I have to talk about my wedding. I have to talk about this death or, like this job, like fit it all in. And that's the impulse. But really, the more powerful writing zones into these true pivotal moments. And so I always start my clients with my favorite prompt. And it's the moment where everything changed. So finding that moment where, like, any moment in your life where everything changed. And from there, we kind of find the best way forward. And you can repeat that prompt over and over, and I'll give you some more prompts as well. But just writing from these prompts kind of gives you this loose, organic way into these pivotal moments, and themes kind of reveal themselves organically, and the path of the story crystallizes versus trying to do, I was born on May 8th, 1986, and then I moved into this house. It just like keys into these really emotional moments. And, each client's timeline is different. So, you might be someone, with a terminal diagnosis and you want to write something faster. So we could, attack an essay versus a whole book. So starting with these prompts kind of gives a frame and a shape for where the story will go. So I thought with you guys, I would start you guys off with this favorite prompt of mine, which I call for short 𝗚𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, a moment where everything changed. And if Veronica, you could pop up the slide, I will tell you a little more about it. All right. So, what is a moment where everything changed, aka 𝗚𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀? It's one of those pivotal moments in life when something big is revealed to you, either because somebody has told you something, done something to you, you have witnessed something, or you have experienced a personal revelation. What we know for sure is that we have crossed a line in consciousness and we can never go back to that place of innocence because we know that something has changed us, our perspectives, our position in the world forever. You might emerge from that moment thinking, wow, I will never feel the same again. These moments often come back to us with a lot of heat when they flash into our minds. You may not recall every conversation verbatim. You may not remember what you were wearing or what you had for lunch, but you always recall the emotion and what comes flooding back as if you just transported yourself through space and time to that place where you had your moment when everything changed. So, with that, I'm going to set you guys off for 15 minutes. You can turn off your camera, whatever makes you comfortable, and just free write for 15 minutes. We'll come back, we'll talk about it, and we'll go from there. If you mix up the prompts and add them on, you'll be like, huh, what does this one prompt have to do with another? But what you'll find is it ends up kind of linking together in this really organic, subconscious way. So I just wanted to leave you guys with a few more prompts. So the first one is tell me about a full moon, a moonrise, sunrise, or sunset that you witnessed in your life. So that's one. And that's one that's really helpful to kind of tune into these sensory moments, bring you into a specific scene to work from as that moment to start from. Tell me about a time that you took a wrong turn is another one. And it can be, actually a wrong turn in a car or a wrong turn in a decision, but it's kind of like a pivotal point that you can work from. And then the third one is tell me about an emotionally charged photograph. Tell me about what you see in the photograph and then what you don't see in the photograph. And this one is really great because if you're working on writing in scene, you have that tangible item that you can look at that can kind of spark these memories, how the light was, what you were wearing, who was there. So that one is really useful. Um, and then there's a part B to the photograph one where you can start using the reporting that I talked to you guys about, where if you still know anyone in the photo, you can get their perspective of the photo and what happened and work that into the moment. So those are just three good ones that I think kind of loosen things up for you to start linking the themes and the moments and linking your story together. So those are those prompts. So I don't know if you can like take a screenshot or write them down, but so you have that to work with. And then in terms of other tools to carry forward, Talal kind of touched on this. So I think it's really useful as you're going through life to make a list of these 𝗚𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, these moments where everything changed so that you have that ready so you can keep using those to build from and write from. So keeping that list and working from that list. So this one, that's I'll call rugs. I don't know, Susan, where you did your death doula training, or if was this part of your work, the regrets, unfinished business, guilt, and shame.
Yes.
Yeah, so I like to use that with writing, with doing this work. So in kind of life evaluation as part of the death doula training to kind of work through these things before you're passing and to find peace. It's this exercise in revisiting things that you regret, unfinished business you haven't dealt with, areas of guilt and shame. And in the death doula work, you work on talking about it and maybe confronting some of those issues with people in your life. But I also find it's a great writing tool to think of moments that tap into those areas. So I think that's something to work with. Um, then we have, just a basic one, which is journaling. So just starting to, you can just start keeping track of your own life and like snippets of dialogue, different feelings, just moment. If you just keep up the practice of journaling, you can draw from that as you move forward and maybe connect to your past as well. But just as keeping writing and keeping in the mode of looking at the world through a writer's lens. Um, Even though I don't like to do things chronologically generally, like if you are wanting to write a longer form memoir, doing a chronological list of important moments in your life can be helpful just to that can then spark the more emotional moments. But if you have a chronological list, that can help you kind of remember certain things that tie it together. So that's something that can be helpful and kind of tracking a list of themes, like as you go through the prompts, go through the rugs, make the chronological list, as you start to like piece together themes of your life, keeping a list of those themes is really helpful. Because then you can kind of tune into what is the message that I want to tell in my story. The next one is a more practical tool for writing. It's called the Pomodoro method or the timer method, which if you have trouble focusing, which, we live in a world with a lot of distractions. So I use this often where you set a timer for either 25 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever kind of chunk of time feels approachable, where you start the timer, turn off your phone, no internet, and just devote that 25 minutes to writing. And then once that's done, you get a 10-minute break and you kind of see how many of those chunks you can do. It kind of helps clear out the space so you can focus on your writing and have that devoted time. And I've talked a little bit about reporting as a tool, which is talking to other people about the moments in your life or looking at old emails, old texts, old photographs, videos, anything that will drop you back into those emotional moments. So that's a very useful tool. Also, just reading memoir and just consuming that and see how other people tell their stories and how they tell their stories and what resonates with you, maybe in the way that you want to tell your own story. So I think that's always useful. Um, and lastly, voice memos. So sometimes it can feel, Veronica's like, who am I talking to? Sometimes it's just helpful to talk into your phone and just start telling a story. If it feels daunting to put it on the page, you can kind of just start telling your story verbally, and then you can listen back to it, write it down, edit it, and all of that. So those are just a few of the things that I wanted to leave with you guys. And, there's a lot of craft essays and things, but that I didn't want to overload you with all that. But this is kind of just like a crack list of things to get to that next step.